first video, we're going to cover a quick bit of work. We're going to have a look at how we can generate a basic scene like this, and moving on from that, including a ball. So we're going to do the textures, we're going to make a skybox, we're going to make some walls, we're going to add it to a level, and we're going to add some textures. So quite a big chunk that you might need to pause and go and redo, and then come back and then watch a bit more. I'm not going to save this. I'm just going to go straight out of this. I'm going to go to new project. I'm not going to save it. As I said, I'm going to open an empty project, and the first thing I'm going to do is go File, Save Project, and I'll give it a name: Ball Game Basic. So that sets us up. That's going to save. So every time I think I'm going to jump away from the scene, I'm just going to hit File, Save before I move off to go do something else. To make sure I've got it sorted. So I've done some experimenting with this, and I think the best way to get started is to start with a basic plane. Having selected that, I'm going to zero it out in the scene. So I am assuming that you've got some basic knowledge of how to interact with this from previous learning, and we're working from there. So I've centered this into the scene. That's where our central point is. I'm just going to look at it and move forward a little bit, so I can see what's going on. So you can see X, Y, and Z, our axes have been put on 0. Now I'm going to control the height, the width and the height, and make those 500 by 500, so that we've got a decent sized scene or floor to work with. So I'm going to call it floor. And from there I'm ready to start moving on to the rest of the modeling. So before I go any further, I'm just going to make a new level. So I'm going to add a level here. We'll call it level 1. We'll just make sure that all of our base objects for this level are inside this level. Makes it much easier as a way of grouping things together, and in case we need to control everything inside the scene. That's all I need to worry about for now with the floor. I'm now going to make the walls. I'm going to do this pretty much as quickly as I can, because I think we need to move on. So we're going to use a basic cube. The basic cube with the cube selected instead of the floor selected. Next, I've selected that now. I'm going to go to wall. I could give them different names for each wall, but because it's a basic scene, we're not going to need that. And again, I'm going to zero that down first of all, so I know where I am. Noticing where it's moving. So Z was moving back. This time we've got a width, height, and depth because it's a cube, not a plane. So let's give the width 20. Yeah, that gives us a nice wall width. Height of 60 and a depth of 500 should be the correct width for the plane. I can check that by moving around and having a look. So just click in the scene. Let's go and have a look around the side there. We can see what's going on. So that's fine. Let's move it to the right position. So we'll just check out. Oh, I've got the floor selected. Let's just move that back to 0. Let's select the wall. And this time let's go 250. So that's going to pull it right the way out to the edge of this wall. And we're going to want it to go up by 30 so that it is sitting on top of the wall. Notice how instead of using the interactive tools that we've got down here, by using the exact figures, it's much quicker to actually position things. So I'm going to make a copy. This copy is going to move in just slightly. So it's the other side of the wall. Nicely positioned if we were tiling up some objects here. So with this wall selected, you can see it's the second wall because it now says 230 instead of 250. We're going to make that minus 250. And that should take us over to the other side without any problem at all. Now there's no other changes I need to make to that because I set it up accurately to begin with. So make another copy, and this time I've got it here. Now the pivot point's in the middle, which makes it a little bit more awkward to position. So let's put the X back to 0. That rotates or puts us right in the middle. And then I'm going to scroll down until I find rotation, which is a little bit of a way down. And I think it's this one. No, it's not that one. There we go. So rotate Y is now set on 90, and I can use the move tool if I want to, but because I know the dimensions, I can scroll right back up again, and just like before, I can set it to 250 here, or not that one. but the Z. So let's put that back on 0. Let's put Z 250. That should move us to the back. Yep. And then I'm going to make another copy. Let's copy it slightly forward so that it's towards us. Let's make sure that we've got that last wall selected. Click on it and we should get the dimensions up. And we're going to put that at minus 250 and it will bring us to the front. So the only thing I need to do there, or 250. So the only thing I want to do there is I want to make a little door here. So I am going to now use my interactive tool of scale, which is down here, and I'm going to try scaling it in until I have kind of a door or a space. About half of it would be good, because then I'm going to move it over. I'm just going to click into my space, have a little walk over here, move it over so that it's closed in there. So go to the move tool and move it in. Just because it's a visual thing, it's not got a specific size. I just need to make it so that the ball's going to fit through there quite easily. So I've set up my scene so it's correctly laid out. So the last thing I need to do is make a player, and then I'm ready to do some texturing. So I'm going to use a sphere. The sphere is going to be the player. At the moment the sphere is a bit big. Let's go and find him. There he is. Let's give him a name. Let's call him P1. We're going to 0 this so that we've got him in the center, and we'll give him a radius, and this again we'll do interactively until he looks about the right size, and then I'm just going to move him above the scene so that we can clearly see him. Okay, so that's the first thing, that's the modeling done. I would recommend that you do it in this kind of order, that you do modeling and then texturing and then lighting and things like that. And the reason is that the more details you add, the more complex it is, the slower your interaction will be moving around the scene as it starts to build the amount of memory it takes to think about where all these pixels and points need to move as you move around the scene. So let's get straight into texturing. So I'm going to select this floor here. To do a texture, if we scroll down, you'll find that texture is here. Now textures are applied to objects as materials, and then each material can be applied to more than one object. So we just need to make one floor, and we could use it a number of times in a number of levels. So in this case we're going to click on picture. Let's go and find let's go and see if we've got, there's some quite nice textures in here that are here by default that you don't need to go and get. So let's go and find some grass. Let's use that. So let's use this grass too. Okay. And as I click OK, that's going to make the texture, and it's assigned it to the surface. So there we've got a basic grass texture on the surface, and it's been named as such. Now if I scroll right to the top, you'll see that that's just outside here, and it's called floor. Now it would have been good to actually call it floor text, that way we know we're not getting confused with our floor model, which is slightly different. So we should have called it floor texture. We'll do that with the walls. So the next is the wall, and again I'm going to make one texture, and this time I can reuse it a lot of times. So with the wall, because we've got one texture now, we could select that, but no, we want to add a new texture, and then inside here we're going to picture, block material. You could select any of these, but I'm selecting block material 11, block 11 there. Click OK. And we'll leave it at that. I'm just going to change the name of it to wall, and then underscore text, just to make it really clear what it is that we're doing. And everything else we'll leave as it is. There's loads of settings in there you can play around with, and at any time you want you can click on these and get into those. So that's the texture, but you can see because the walls were stretched out wide, the texture hasn't mapped across very nicely. So at this point we just need to do a little bit of learning to do with how we position textures on 3D models. So you can see here that we've got this U and V. U and V are used because X, Y and Z are already taken up with the dimensions of the grid. So U and V hold the dimensions of the surface, or the texture on the surface. So if I start to play around with the scale of the U and the V, I can get my bricks to quite a nice size. I need to do both so that they make sense and match up a little bit. let's go to 10 for that one. So we've got nice small bricks. I'm going to go 30 for that one and see what that looks like. That's quite nice. So 10 and 30. Now if I remember that, that's going to be helpful for me. So I've got a really nice little brick wall there. Let's just zoom in and have a little look. Ooh, yeah, so it's repeating quite nicely over the surface. Looks fairly decent. So let's go to the next wall. Now this time I've already got a texture, so I don't need to make it again, which makes it super easy. I just click on the dot, 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 go and click on the texture, click OK, and I've got it applied. Then I need to remember my dimensions, which I think was 30 and 10. Yep, okay, so that's pretty decent. And the next one, and again I'm just repeating the process, just selected the, let's just make sure it is the next one. And again I'm just going to assign that, and 30 and 10, and that gives me that texture. And then the last wall here, again texture, go and select the wall, okay, 30 and 10. Okay, so that gives me basic shape. You see across the top, it's still doing 30 across the top there in that pinched area there. That doesn't really matter. I'm quite happy with that. It looks like a soft grey, which is fine. So the last thing I need to texture is the ball. But before I do that, I'm going to add something called a skybox, and you'll see why in a second. So the skybox, basically what that's doing is it's using the skybox as almost like a lighting system for the scene. So what you can see around here will actually be used as some form of illumination and global illumination for the scene. And it will be applied to the level, and we can make use of it. Now, we don't want to apply this. If it really slows down your computer, you can get rid of it again and put it in at the end. But the reason I want it in is I'm going to do something different with the texture of this ball, which I know looks quite nice, and that is I'm going to use the skybox as a reflection for this on the surface. So I'm going to go to texture, I'm going to make a new texture, so I'm going to go add instead of OK. Inside here I'm going to do P1 underscore text, and I'm not adding a picture this time or a color. I'm just going to go straight to reflection skybox, and we're going to go click on that, and we can pick skybox 1. That's why I made the skybox before I made the texture. Now there's loads of other things you can play around with, but I thought you'd quite like this. So it doesn't look great now, but when I click play in a second, let me just move back on it so you can see most of the scene. So when I click OK, so the play button is going to take us into like playing the game. Now you can see how that's rendered quite nicely with the reflections on the surface, almost like a shiny marble. So we're about there we've now modeled it, we've got textures, we're ready to start with interactivity. So I'm going to start a new video because that's quite a chunk that we've done there. I'm going to stop playing, it takes me back to the user interface here, and then we're ready to start the next video.